At this point, I am ready to start working on my vase. I know I've got a flower here. I've only got one flower and it doesn't even have a stem, but I'm going to take a break from flowers and move over to the vase because for the flower, I need to do one very important thing, and that is talk about different types of curves you can make. So I'm going to take the flower that I've got here, and over in my outliner, I'm going to set its visibility to off. And now it looks like I've got a blank Maya window. I'm going to use my front orthographic view for this, and that is important because all of the curves you draw in Maya want to be drawn on the viewing axes. So if I'm drawing here in the perspective view, I'm actually going to be drawing on the top view. So it doesn't make any sense to draw in perspective. I want to be drawing very specifically in front, top, or side, and I'm going to start in the front. Curves live in the Create menu, so Create, Curve Tools, and it looks like there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 types of curves, which is a lot. In truth, there's basically the CV curve tool and the Bezier curve tool. The EP curve and the pencil curve both make CVs. The 2 and 3 point arcs do make arcs, and eventually that will turn into a CV curve. So the CV curve is really the principal tool that Autodesk wants you to use here. The way that this CV curve works is this. I'm going to start it running. My mouse cursor turns into a crosshair, and now every time I click, I put down a point. So my first click, I've created an object called Curve1, and now I'm just going to keep clicking a little bit. You see that when I click once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, on my 4th click, what I get is a curved line inside a cage. What CVs are is control vertices. Control vertices control the tangency of the curve. So as I continue to click, what I'm doing is I'm putting these tangency points in, and my curve is being built around the points of tangency. If I click very close together, I can make very tiny, very tight, precise curves. If I click further apart, I can make very loose, open curves. Whenever I press Enter, that ends the curve command, leaving me with the curve that I've drawn. When I right-click on the curve, you'll see that I can go in and I can edit control vertices. These are the control vertices that I originally drew, and I can move them, rotate them, scale them, and edit the curve that way. There are other editing modes like Curve Point and Edit Point. They will allow you to edit the curve, but you'll see that you sometimes get a funny result with them. So the recommended way to edit a curve is through the control vertices, which are the points you originally clicked. I do recommend that you spend some time getting used to running the CV curve tool so that you can see the others. Here's the EP curve. With the EP curve, when I click the first time, I place a point, creating curve 1. And now when I click, what I'm doing is I'm placing curve points, which will allow me to draw the curve more or less the way that I would expect. If you prefer this to the CV curve tool, that's okay. Just remember that it is a little bit different, and that when you press Enter, what you'll be generating is essentially a CV curve tool. The only difference is that you won't really know where exactly your CVs are. Back to Create, Curve Tools. I'll skip over Bezier for now because it is different. Here's the pencil curve. With the pencil curve, my mouse cursor turns into a little pencil, and I click and drag and I scribble. Whee! Scribble, scribble, scribble. So much fun. When I let go, that generates a curve. The pencil tool does keep running. You have to cancel it by pressing Q, W, E, or R. I'll press W. The pencil curve does also generate a CV curve. Again, you don't really know where your CVs are. And when you go into control vertex mode, you will find roughly 1 billion CVs have been generated for your scribble. So the pencil curve doesn't really generate a useful curve. This isn't something that you can edit. It's not really something you want to do. So it's fun, but kind of useless for our purposes. The 3-point circular arc, I click once, I click twice. The third time I click and drag, and that will generate a 3-point arc, which will let me make Pac-Man. Yay, Pac-Man! When I let go and press enter, there is my arc. Right-click into control vertex mode, and you see here are all of the same control vertices for me to edit. Same thing with the 2-point circular arc. In this case, I click once, I click twice, and this one's making like a bow and arrow. Ooh. I press enter, there is my curve, control vertex, and it's the same type of CV curve. Some of you are probably wondering at this point, how do I make a circle? There is a circle. It's listed a little bit differently. It's listed under NURBS primitives. There's the circle. There's also a square. I don't recommend the square. The square actually creates 4 separate curves for you. But there is a circle, so if you ever find that you need to make a circle, it's there. It's just drawn in the top view. So last, back in Curve Tools, here is the Bezier curve tool. Let me just make sure I'm in the right tool. The Bezier curve tool will be familiar to you if you use a lot of Adobe products, things like After Effects, Illustrator, and even Photoshop to some degree. Bezier curves allow you to click a point and drag. So I've placed my first point, I've made Bezier 1, and now when I click and drag, I'm creating these things called Bezier handles. They're similar to CVs in that they control the tangency of the curve, but the Bezier sits directly on the curve. If you're already comfortable with Bezier, you can continue to work with Bezier. The Bezier curve is a relatively new feature for Maya. It's been using Bezier curves in other windows like its animation editors for years, but they only added it a couple of years ago as a drawing tool, so it's maybe not as developed as you would really like. But you can continue to use your Bezier tools. When I press enter to end the curve tool, you'll see that it looks like it's a CV curve tool, but it isn't. If I go to control vertex mode, that does indeed allow me to edit my Bezier points and my Bezier handles. So those are all the different types of curves. The last thing I'll say about curves is that curves are construction objects. They don't show up in your final renders. They do not output very easily. They are there to help you build other things. So when we use curves, we always have a very specific purpose for them. We're going to be using them to make things or to control things. We never make a curve for its own sake. I'm going to pause this here so that you have a chance to try the different curve tools out. In my next video, I will be creating a CV curve, and I will be using it to make a nice vase for my flower. So go ahead, practice with all the curve tools. I strongly recommend the CV curve tool itself. Just try drawing a few things and see what you like. It may also help you if I remind you that the X key on your keyboard will allow you to snap points to the grid. That may give you a little more control over what you're drawing. So take your time, get yourself comfortable with the way the tool works, and when you're done, come and join me in the next video where we're going to make a nice vase.